For most people in business, their revenue and profit is sort of the number one metric that they're looking at in terms of, is this business valuable? Would someone ever buy it? But actually, today we're talking to a business exit strategist who says that the most important thing is that you've built a business that can run without you. Yes, exactly. One that you are not required to be in, which obviously makes it very saleable. So stay tuned to find out how you can build this sort of business, whether or not you're thinking about leaving it now, soon, or never. You could also be thinking, how can I claim back more freedom? Have a business that is literally giving me more freedom because you don't have to be in it all the time for it to be generating revenue and profit. That's what we're talking about today. Stay tuned. It's coming right up. My very special guest today is Laurie Stirling, who is a business exit strategist. She helps entrepreneurs design companies that can run without them. Now, Laurie is a fellow Aussie. Well, I call myself an Aussie, even though I am a New Zealander who's been living in Australia a long time. But, you know, a fellow Antipodean. She's living over in the UK, though, literally on the other side of the world. And we had a great conversation. She's a seasoned entrepreneur with over 2 decades working in her own businesses, running a successful agency, and then as a CFO, COO in other companies, helping them to manage their operations better and really learning the nuts, bolts, and the nitty gritty of building scalable systems, how to delegate confidently, prepare for that eventual exit or succession without burning out along the way. So I know you're going to love this conversation that we have because Laurie shares so many I know that you're going to love this conversation because Laurie shares so many practical insights that you can have on your business, understanding, the type of business that you have right now, learning the sort of bottlenecks that could be present that are really stopping your growth and scalability. She even has a great quiz, so make sure that you listen in for that one where you can discover what is the main bottleneck that you're experiencing right now in your business. And I know that you'll come away from this conversation knowing more about yourself and about your business and how to turn it into that really valuable asset that you can one day sell, even if that is not going to be in the near future. Obviously, that's something that we can all look at and work towards as a future goal. So without further ado, let me play this interview for you. For most people in business, their revenue and profit is sort of the number one metric that they're looking at in terms of, is this business valuable? Would someone ever buy it? But actually, today we're talking to a business exit strategist who says that the most important thing is that you've built a business that can run without you. Yes, exactly. One that you are not required to be in, which obviously makes it very saleable. So stay tuned to find out how you can build this sort of business, whether or not you're thinking about leaving it now, soon, or never. You could also be thinking, how can I claim back more freedom? Have a business that is literally giving me more freedom because you don't have to be in it all the time for it to be generating revenue and profit. That's what we're talking about today. Stay tuned. It's coming right up. All right. Hello. So here we are in the studio and I've got Laurie Stirling here with me. Welcome to the podcast, Laurie. So good to have you here today.
Hello. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So Laurie is actually a business exit strategist, which is really interesting. I think you may be the first one I've had a conversation with here on She's a Business. So congratulations for being number one. This is exciting. I'm really keen to hear, obviously we're going to talk about this today, is how you build a business that runs itself. And obviously from your perspective, that means that it's a saleable business that you're going to be able to exit out of it. But can you tell us a bit more about your background, how you got into this, and what it is that you do specifically in your business, like what sort of businesses you work with and help.
For sure, yeah. So, well, I started my first business over 20 years ago when I was a ripe old age of 21. I was so naive when I started that business. I thought I was a bookkeeper before that. I'd been hired because GST had just been introduced in Australia,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd done that for maybe four or 5 years. And then I'm like, no, I know everything there is to know about business now. I'm going to start my own business. And I brought my husband along for the ride too, and he had no idea what he was in for. But I was literally, I like started that business by walking the streets, knocking on
Mm.
doors, handing out business cards, driving up. And it started out as a graphic design business, then pivoted into web design, and then into web
Oh,
development.
wow.
And we ran that business for over 14
Mm-hmm.
years. And it was a brilliant lifestyle business. It was earning six-figure profits. We would travel overseas, had kids, bought a house, all of that. So we were living the life. And then we had this crazy idea that we were going to uplift our whole life and move overseas. And my husband, he has British citizenship. So that was sort of on the cards for quite a
Mm.
while. And then, so we decided that, well, at first we wanted to move the business to the UK. So we went and visited the UK for about 3 months and see if we could actually get that business up
Mm-hmm.
and running. But instead, my husband ended up getting a job at a Norwegian tech startup. So completely different direction that we were expecting
Mm-hmm.
to go. But I'd say if I could say my story in a nutshell, it's the story of the many pivots of my career. Um, so we actually ended up selling our business, our web design business, but not for nearly as much as it could have been because our business was entirely dependent on us.
Mm.
And I ended up learning a really scary statistic is that 85% of businesses that go to market to sell their business fail to sell because of the main reason being the dependency on the business owner.
Mm.
So if we build our businesses, spend years in it, with the expectancy that, one day I can sell that and that could be my retirement plan, or maybe if I can get it running without me, it can continue making money while I retire. And all of those plans, for 85% of people, those plans go out the window.
Mm.
It's just not a viable option. If anything, they can liquidate the business. But if your business is mainly like IP,
Mm.
then you don't really have much of an asset there to liquidate. So it was a pretty scary statistic when I learned that.
Yes.
So my pivot, my husband went into the tech industry, and then I decided I was going to help business owners, because of my financial background, help business owners to be able to budget with unpredictable income. Because I had done it myself for 14 years. Like, it's not easy to be able to go, like, live through the ups and
Mm.
downs of that unpredictable nature. So I thought, that's it. I'm going to do my own consulting, go out there and help businesses do financial
Mm-hmm.
coaching. And what I found was I was really good at diagnosing the problems in a business by looking at their metrics and their data and their numbers. But I couldn't fix the problem until I went deeper into
Mm.
operations. And to me, like, I'd run a business for over 14 years and I had no idea what operations even meant. To me, it sounded like one of those buzzwords that people like, operations,
Mm.
and you're like, uh-huh, yeah, sure. And so I ended up going down an absolute rabbit hole,
Mm.
like I do, and researching the guts because I wanted to be able to deliver to my clients even better. So I researched everything about this subject, found a company, like, world renowned leader in the industry in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, they were charging like 5,000 US dollars to do their course. These days, I think it's 8,000 US dollars. So it's only gone up in
Mm.
price. And I'm like, I wanted to do that course, but I didn't have 5,000 US dollars at that time. So I actually reached out to them and said, look, this is what I do, my coaching, my background, my business. Would you be interested in me joining the team as a coach? And they went, yeah, let's do it. So this was a US based company, and I ended up working for them and becoming a coach inside their program and learning everything there is to know. And that's when I discovered this magic of what you can have a business that runs itself
Mm.
without you being, the bottleneck to everything. It was like, that's, crazy. I didn't even know there was such a thing. And so I actually was working for them right through the
Mhm.
pandemic. And it was actually a really difficult time to be sort of thrown into the midst of it all, because people were looking around the room for the adult in the room saying, what should I do? And then they were looking at me and I'm like, I've never lived through a pandemic before, but the frameworks that I had learned
Mhm.
through coaching and the operations and being able to put systems in place meant that people could live, like they could work through this and they can pivot their business and move online and make the adjustments that they needed to, and then their business can continue. And that was such an enormous learning curve for me, but it was also very stressful at the time. So I ended up finishing up with them after 18 months, and just stepping into the COO role and doing fractional COO work for various
Mhm.
businesses, some US based, some based in the UK, and like helping them from the inside of their business, not just from the coaching consulting
Mhm.
side. So I did that for a number of years and then realized I actually want to help more people. I don't just want to help, the three or four clients that I had as a fractional COO, and I just wanted to be able to help more.
Mm.
So that's when I pivoted again into this exit strategy. I'm like, more people need to know that they can have a business that runs without them so that they can have the life of freedom that they want and financial goals without it being dependent on them. So if they go on holidays, the business doesn't have to stop. That's if, the ups and downs in the market can actually be, an advantage to them, not a downfall. And so that was sort of how it all began, I guess,
Yeah.
is
Oh,
the start of my
yeah,
story.
so it's awesome. There's so many things that I'm like, oh, which way shall we go with this? Because, I think that it's interesting when we talk business. So, is there a particular type of business? I mean, your story and the kind of companies that you work for and
Mm.
with, it does sound very varied. So now that you're in your own space with all of that behind you, is there a particular type of business that you tend to work with? Like, are they bricks and mortar businesses that you help to kind of go online and create, other streams that are the less of that tangible nature in terms of having the owner needing to be part of it. What when we're talking business, what sort of business are we talking about?
Yeah, well, I have worked with both bricks and mortar and retail and product businesses, but I tend to specialize in service based simply because usually the IP that's living inside the owner's head is their knowledge, and that makes them the talent of the business, and they feel
Mm.
like they are the business. The business doesn't exist without them. So that's where I specialize, because I sort of have this like ability to be able to draw out the IP out of their head and their ideas and put them into something substantial that they can then either teach their team, or they can create documentation, or they can
Mm.
teach their clients. Like, it's actually tangible IP that then can be duplicated, and I guess depending on the type of business model that you want to, and that's another something else we can talk
Mm.
about, is that the way we duplicate that information is different depending on what sort of business. So in some cases, people will be happy to have an agency style model and have, like, one of the first people someone will hire is another me. I want to hire another me. But the thing is, with hiring another you, that is the agency style model,
Mm.
is that you basically have to bring in double the amount of sales pretty much overnight. So you have to have that pressure on the sales funnel. There can be personality clashes when you hire someone that's already experienced in the field, and it's also a more expensive option.
Mm.
And the margins tend to be lower when you work in an agency type model. So it's still definitely a valid model and workable, but there are other options
Mm.
as well.
Mhm.
So some of the other options when you're scaling, when you are the talent of the business, is being able to train someone and teach someone. And that could turn into a franchise model, or it could be still the agency model, but not as much pressure on the sales funnel immediately to start. You can sort of build that as you train someone up. It's usually not as expensive because you're training the skill set that you want them to have, and you're distilling all the, if you've had like 20, 30 years of experience in your industry, in your career, you're not passing on 20, 30 years of knowledge. You're actually distilling the most important pieces that you've learned along the way and passing those
Yeah.
pieces on. So that can be a much more viable way to grow the business. But there's actually 5 ways. So the third way is what I call the rock star method, and that is when, as business owners, we start wearing lots of hats. We learn how to do the finance, we learn how to do the sales calls, we learn how to do our own marketing, our own social media, all of the automations and tech in our business. We start wearing all the
Yeah.
hats, and we wear them with pride. Like, it took us a long time. There's a lot of effort to be able to learn all of that along the way. But at some point, that's going to also be your downfall. That means that you end up at capacity doing all the things. So we need to start taking the hats back off and delegating back to team members so that you can just turn up and be the talent. You can just turn up and be the rock star of your business. You don't have to sell the tickets. You don't have to sell the merchandise. You don't have to book the arena. You just turn up and play play a set and do what you do best. And so the team is looking after all of that for you, and they're supporting you to do what you do best. Then there is the 4th way to scale, and that is one-to-many. But that could be one-to-many through courses and memberships and group programs. That can also be selling one-to-many, so on stages or on webinars and video formats. It can also be one-to-many using technology, so building SaaS software, or being able to utilize technology to amplify what you do in such a way that your IP has maybe like an AI agent or something like that, where your IP has been put in such a way inside the software that it builds sort of like bumpers for your staff to say, okay, this is how we do things. Don't do it other people's way. We're doing it my way, because that has been the proven methodology that's worked for our clients for years now. So I'm going to teach you. And then having the framework of software means that your team can, like, for example, I built a piece of software that helps reverse engineer your sales numbers to work out, well, how many products do we need to sell? How many leads do we need to get from that? And like, normally that has lived in my head, or I can do it in a spreadsheet, but now I can give that piece of software to my team so that they can guide clients through that as well. And so that framework is already set for being able to deliver one-to-many through the software. So that's the 4th method. And the 5th method is for those who are like, no, I don't want a team. I just want to become the best in my industry, or become known for it. And then I can increase my demand, which means I can increase my prices. And then, like, you just become the go-to person, and you can literally write the book on the topic. You're just, that good. And then you get to dictate those prices as well. So there's, 5 ways that when you are the talent, that you can still grow and expand beyond just that time restriction that usually we would have.
Yeah, awesome. So I have some questions around that, because I think a lot of people listening probably are in the type of business where it is your own IP, you are the talent, you're the brains behind it, it's your coaching, whether you have, usually you bring on people to kind of support and take some of those hats off so that you can spend the time doing the things that you need to do. But I'm really curious as to how, because we started the conversation being around, business that you can potentially sell. So how you can exit out of a business like that when it's built around you. And, you mentioned your own experience building the agency, that clearly, you're selling your expertise, your IP, and then you came to sort of sell it as a business, and it was really difficult. That was an amazing statistic
Mm-hmm.
that you had. And I'm like, well, it's not really surprising, because I guess you are
Yeah.
the business in terms of it is your knowledge. So tell me how you see, when you're the rock star, you're the personal brand of the business and it is really your IP. How do you transition that? Because that's really what, even in those scaling strategies, you're still front and
Mm-hmm.
center of the business. And yes, there's all of
Yeah.
those ways that you can grow revenue without growing time, but it doesn't take away the problem that it's still you at the front of the business. So what turns
Mm-hmm.
it into a business that can sell easily, when you've got that sort of setup or model?
Yes, essentially it's assets. So the more assets that your business has, the more it can do without you and not be dependent on you, the more valuable it becomes as a business. Now, that process of so many clients might come to you because you are you. Or like if somebody else did the work, they'd be like, no, we want to work with Jess. Like, I don't want to work with anyone else
Yeah.
but you. So what has to happen is yes, there is a method of like quality assurance that needs to happen. And so your team, and that comes through building assets of ensuring that things are done a certain way, whether that's documentation or checklists or the training that goes into it.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is there's a transfer of trust that needs to happen between the business owner, who is the face of the business, and the person who's going to be looking after that particular
Mm-hmm.
client. So at some stage, we'll say, oh, yes, look, I'm good at, that the big picture vision, but my team member is actually much better at me at this very specific area that is they can help you. So I'm going to hand them over to you, knowing she knows everything that I've learned, everything that I teach, experience the way I work. She's going to follow my same methodology that helps get exactly the same results as I do with my clients. So
Mm-hmm.
that transfer of trust is super important when you're bringing team member into it. And that is part of that process of like that quality assurance and making sure everybody is on that same page as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. It's interesting because you make me think back to all my years in marketing, and I've managed when we had complete mergers, acquisitions, and a whole new
Yeah.
brand has taken over a company, and we're basically transferring the audience, the customers from one into the new, and trying not
Yeah.
to lose them, and obviously keeping that advocacy there. And from that experience, it's just a process. Like you set a good
Yeah.
time frame on it, and it happens in little stages and phases so that it's going at the right pace
It
and
does.
everybody feels comfortable and happy along the way. That's absolutely possible. I guess that sort of happens once you have that buyer. But are the buyers, how keen are they to take on a business that someone's built that is really quite personal? Like you have a personal brand and it's a lot about you. Like, what do you see there as the biggest barriers that the buyers are seeing in, well, should I buy this person's business or build their own? Because, yeah, there will be that window of time where even if you do buy it and it's a ready-made business and it's got systems and it's got all the stuff that's happening, but you've got a big
Yeah.
transition period before you're really fully in the face of it and in charge.
Yeah. So hopefully most of the clients that are coming over, it's what we would call goodwill in the industry, is that that company has built up goodwill in the meantime. So most of the systems and processes hopefully shouldn't change. Like the customers shouldn't feel a big difference when they're moving from one brand to another. There might be, some branding, some colors might change or something like that. But hopefully the experience from the client's point of view is that it stays the same or it improves, it gets even better.
Mm.
So you can improve, put more financial backing behind it, more like as you help more clients, that income generation will be able to benefit everyone,
Mm.
not just the new people that come on board. But it's interesting that you talk about like personal brand versus a business brand there, because like some of the biggest names we know of, let's say Richard Branson behind Virgin. Yes, we follow Virgin, but we also follow Richard, and he's got lots of brands, but he's not in there flying the planes. Like he is still the face of the business, and personal brand goes enormous way
Mm.
in that you can have like a particular footballer that hundreds of thousands of people follow compared to all the football clubs put together. That like personal brand versus business brand, personal brand will always win first. They will always be the bigger brand, and you can have multiple brands, and knowing that whatever the ethos is or the values that that business owner brings to the table, that is going to permeate through all the businesses, and that is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just hearing you talk about that, and obviously Richard Branson, Virgin, they're on a huge scale in terms of business. So,
Exactly.
that's the sort of business where you have a really strong business brand. And I've always used Richard as such a great example of like how you bring personality into a business brand, because he kind of infused his own personal brand into Virgin. That's why it's disrupted so many markets, but that's a whole branding story. I could talk about that for ages. Um, but I think, for
Exactly.
most of us where we run our own business, maybe you have a business brand as your business name, or maybe it is your own, a bit like both of ours. It's really sort of built on
Yeah.
ourselves. It is a different kettle of fish if we're thinking, well, we're going to sell this business. Is someone going to take over my business? Obviously, they would rebrand because they're not me. They're not my name. But there are a lot of assets.
Not necessarily.
Not
Yeah.
necessarily. Yeah, and I guess,
Yeah.
it's interesting because you say that, as you said, there's a lot of assets that come along with a business, but it would be just that fit, being a great fit. So the person coming in, is like, well, I want to take on that kind of business where they're going to step into a role where they're going to potentially be that type of personal brand as well, so that they can continue and see that merging, or they're going to take some assets and use it in a totally different way. Like maybe they're going to pivot the business
Yeah.
completely and go down a
True.
different track. So I love it. I guess this is why you probably find it exciting, because there is so many possibilities. Like now that we talk about it, as I'm thinking, okay, so I always thought, the rock star type of business, as you mentioned, like, well, you just build it and you do whatever you want to do while you're in it, and then when you're done, you're just done. But I
Yeah.
now see that so differently, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because
I think a big part of it is like we've spent years building our businesses, pouring our heart into it,
mm,
our time into it. And it's been the impact that drives us, like the impact that we have on our clients and the results that we
mm,
can make. That's what makes it all worthwhile for us. And so to actually get to the end of our careers and say, oh, well, now I have to pack it all up and close it all down. And that impact is like just going to stop. Like, wouldn't it be great to be able to pass that on
mm,
to the next generation so that that impact can
yeah.
continue, and that legacy doesn't have to stop with you. It can be passed on to the next
Yeah,
person.
it's so true. And I was sitting there thinking, as you do, about like, well, how do I apply that to me? And I'm like, well, I've built all these programs. I've built my main program. Within that, there's so many frameworks. I'm like, yes, these are all assets. It's so trainable. I teach it
Yeah.
already, obviously, to my client. They are real pieces of assets. And it's funny because my very first business, as we all have an initial first one, I built it totally differently. Like there was no personal brand. It was just a business
Hmm.
brand. And I think even when I began it, I had a strategy in terms of an exit strategy. Whereas with this one, I was just like, I have no plans to sell it. I'm not even thinking about that. I'm
Yeah.
just starting it because this is what I want to do, is help people with marketing. But that
Yeah.
first business, very different. And it got to a point, really, I made a big strategic change, or a couple of changes, and was able to bring someone in to literally manage the business for me. And I almost stepped out of it. It ran for another 18 months with me doing absolutely bugger all, would just say. Like I had babies at home. I was still working a full-time job. I would then decided I'd start this business. So I was doing like, I don't even know, 5 minutes in it a month, like almost nothing. And that really was like the catalyst to me go, right, this is actually a business I can sell. And the thing that is so exciting was, even though it had been, a side hustle, it then was able to manage having someone run it full time, and I was still profitable from it. But it was really the potential. Like, it's like, here's this little asset,
Yes.
and it was still a little asset at that point in time. Like, I didn't sell it for millions or anything like that. It was very modest, but it was the potential that was a real selling piece, because it's like, we haven't even scratched the surface at the moment. Like, here's the vision
Yes.
and here's what you could do with it. But, obviously it's up to you, but it was almost like
That's right.
ready to go,
And yeah, and that's absolutely what makes a business more valuable, is the untapped potential. So if you have like dominated the market in your city, for
Mm.
example, well, how many more cities are there in Australia or in the country that you live in that you can dominate in all of
Yeah.
those areas as well? Or like, let's go past our country, let's go international. Like, and that's where investors or new business people who want to take over the business, buy into the business, that's where they're looking for, is the untapped potential. Where can we take this? How far has it gotten where it got us now, and then how far can I take this? How is this going to support us to grow even further? And that is where absolutely the gold is.
Yeah.
The value
Yeah.
when you're selling is its
The
potential.
potential, yeah. And you could just see that that is such a great selling point if you do have a very personal business that's built on
Mm-hmm.
you. And like you say, you've got assets within it, things that are saleable, things that are of value. But it's really going to be that, wow, look at what you could do with this business. That is going to be the selling point, which is so cool. We were chatting beforehand, the business that runs without you, we're like, well, who doesn't want a business that gives you more freedom? Like, everybody
Yeah,
got into business because
yeah,
we're like, we don't, for some reason, we don't want the 9 to 5. Like, we don't like this
yeah.
structure. We don't like the, having to ask for permission to go on holiday, all of those things that come with the job. Why would you want to when you can
Yes.
work for yourself and have the ability to choose? But what's the real difference, do you think, between one that is a freedom-based business and one that, you might have labeled it a founder's trap? Like, you started a business and
Oh,
now
yeah.
you've literally just created a prison for yourself.
Yeah. I reckon it's when you start getting to the stage where you might start hiring a few team members, and then you feel like, well, if I go on holiday for 1 or 2 weeks, then I know my income is going to go down, which
Mm,
means I need to be able to pay my workers, which means I'm probably not going to get paid, which means that like maybe I'm going to have to let someone go. And then like that sort of like that pressure of like that's somebody's livelihood that I'm now
mm,
supporting. And it starts to feel like it's gotten a little bit away from
mm,
us, that, I'm actually trapped to this and feel bad if I can't continue it, or can't step away because it is dependent on me. And because we feel like, even if like most of the work gets done without you, you might still feel like you are the superhero of the business.
mm,
So quite often when people do step out of the business for a few weeks, they'll be checking in and sending emails and messages saying, how's this, how's that? Kind of like maybe it's a little bit of a mindset thing where people feel like, oh my, everyone's doing fine without me, but that's my business. How can everyone be doing fine without me? Well, how about I'm going to throw a little happy grenade in over here, so that, suddenly I'm needed again. I'll swoop in and I'll be the superhero of the business. So
the
quite
ego's getting in
that
the way.
can, yeah, it can.
Oh my
It
goodness.
definitely
Yeah.
can. And so, like, sometimes it is just the pressure and us not sleeping at night and worrying about where the next check's coming
Mm.
from. But sometimes we're actually putting that pressure on ourselves
Yes.
and making that happen and not being able to trust our team.
Yeah, it's almost like the business is fulfilling a need that you have as a person. And usually I think, this is happening without anyone realizing. It's not like you go, I'm creating a business so that I'm going to be important. Like, no one actually consciously thinks that, but it does happen
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
business is fulfilling a need, a desire, some sort of
Yeah.
fulfillment that you have.
Absolutely.
And it's so interesting to kind of recognize what those are, and actually be able to release it so that you can treat the business like the business should be working for you. It's not something, right, that
Yeah.
should be running you, like you're running the business. And to be able to step back from it,
Mhm.
not have that emotional attachment to it, means that you can make
Yeah.
kind of better
But
decisions around it, right?
that's right. And it happens so often. I see it, especially when the business owner is the talent of the business. Like you could be a copywriter who's really good at words, or you could be a musician, or someone who, like, that talent has been there pretty much most of their life. And then that talent is part of their identity,
Mm,
who they are as a person. And then when you start bringing a business into it, then you're attaching your value as a person to how much income you're
mm,
making. And that's the biggest mistake, in that you are completely valuable no matter how much your business is making.
yeah.
Like, you are a super valuable person, and attaching your identity, and then when your business becomes part of your identity, that's where that trap can happen,
Mm.
that mistake.
Yes, so true. I was just thinking, and I've gone onto a different tangent in my mind, um, about.
I
Oh,
love
I
it.
know there's so many places, because there's different areas that we could dig into here. But I was thinking about, you know, first of all with people, because you mentioned when you hire a team, that can actually be something that
Mm.
people get really trapped in. And I've certainly experienced two totally different, I'd say at the extremes of both, where
Mhm.
and maybe, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that, and I guess what you do or how you advise people so that they don't fall into the trap of bringing on people, but then you just literally shift your time from doing the doing to actually doing the managing. And, it's like,
Yes.
well, now you've got the team, and the team then are reliant on you. So instead of it being the clients and the work that's reliant on you, now the team's reliant on you. And I think this is
Yes.
something so many people experience that, and then they retract from it because they're like, whoa, this is now too much. Now I've got all these people, and then it's not just them. You always take on stuff that's happening in their personal lives, and it gets so much. And I have talked to so
Yeah.
many women, they're like, I don't even want a team. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with people.
Yeah.
They've got their problems. I've got enough to figure out in my own life. And they kind of really repel from the thought of having team members. And I know, and
Mhm.
I'm going to stop talking in a second. I know that there's a difference, because after I'd learned some lessons, I learned how to be the type of manager that's like very hands off, and very much like, I would just say, this is what I want, and you figure out how you want to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't really care as long as it gets
Yeah.
done. But we had a totally different kind of relationship. And I'm curious as to, I don't even know how I've done the two, or what it was that made the difference. I just know that I've been there. So how do you help
Yeah.
people to be the other type, where they are not
Yeah.
embedded in so deeply that they can't step away?
Absolutely. So, funny thing is that most of our experience of being a leader is by observing usually what not to do by bad managers that you've had in the
Mhm.
past. So it's not usually learnt through osmosis or that sort of thing. So one of the biggest mistakes I see entrepreneurs make, business leaders make, when they're delegating tasks to people, is they're delegating the task but not delegating the decisions that come with that task. So when
Mm.
you make a decision in your business, you're the risk taker. That's why you became an entrepreneur, because you were willing to take on risk to be able to take that next step in your business, and that's part of the
Mm.
deal when you're a business owner. When you're asking a team member to make a decision for you, you're asking them to take on some risk. And the team member needs to know that, well, what if I make a mistake? Like, what if I lose thousands of
Yeah.
dollars? Or what if I get fired because I make a mistake? So it's whether that team member feels safe enough to make a decision, to understand, well, are there parameters on how I'm allowed to make that decision? Is there like a limit on don't spend more than $100 on the to solve this problem?
Mm.
Is it that if I make a mistake, am I like, do I own the mistake? Do I go and fix it? Or is the business owner going to swoop in and be the superhero and have to fix it and then, get in trouble? Or are they going to work with me to make sure that doesn't happen again, to build a system around it, to make sure that, that we're not going to take the person isn't going to take the blame. It's the system that's going to take the blame, and therefore we can improve it and move going forward. So sometimes that is through understanding what is the outcome, like the KPI that they're trying to achieve. So if I'm delegating social media to somebody and I've said, okay, your goal is to post 3 times a week on our social media, that's the KPI that you've given them. I've posted 3 posts, my job is done. But if the goal is actually, well, we want people on our social media to then sign up to our freebie, then actually the KPI is how many people signed up to my freebie each week. And I could do 1 post a week that might get 100 people signing up to a freebie versus 3 posts that just get 1 or 2 likes. There's a completely different outcome. And you're giving the onus to the outcome to your team member to say, well, your job is to increase leads coming in, then they can have a different tactic than if it was just to post 3 times a week. So understanding what is that outcome of what we're trying to achieve and why is important. That's a part of the delegation process and the decision. So you could say, okay, when you have a decision to make, here's how I would usually make that decision. And you can even systemize that by putting that into a decision tree or a map of what those decisions can look like.
Exactly. And I think that that's probably, reflecting back, one of the key differences that I think when you're delegating tasks to someone, like, can you please do this? Then they're doing them, but they have to come back to you, because then, it's almost like they've got a to-do list and it's finished. And so they're always going, well, what do I need to do next? What do I need to do next? Whereas when you take it up a level and actually, scarily, I know this is the scary thing for some people, give them ownership over something and say, I want you to own this, and this is what I want from it. Like you said, what is the outcome? Like, what does success even look like? What is the expectation of that? Is it that you're happy if there are just posts going up and it doesn't matter how they're performing? Or is there something that's deeper than that and it's about the performance or the outcome? If they know what it is and they can therefore make the decisions around it, and they know, like you said, there's safety in doing it, because they might not know whether 3 posts is going to be better than doing 1 better one. They're going to probably need to experiment, and you might need to also be willing to allow the experiments and enable it, and maybe, like you said, give them that, well, this is how I probably would have approached it, but what do you think? Do you have any other ideas? Maybe they're going to. And I think that was one of the things I found. Once you give people that autonomy and you give them the ability to take ownership of something, they start thinking. And when you're not allowing them to think, they expect you to do the thinking for them. And that is exhausting. So it's like, are you doing the thinking, or are your people thinking about it for themselves? And then maybe, floating a few things past you, great. But you actually then are more giving feedback on it as opposed to having to do the thinking.
And then that can be captured and turned into an asset.
Yes, exactly. There are so many. I've found some really cool tools. There's one that I love at the moment called Scribe. And if you're doing, do you know that one? It's like, it's become my
Yes,
favorite.
I love it.
I did use Loom for a while, and Loom is great, but Scribe actually puts it into an SOP document for you. Like, literally, you can go through the steps and it will automatically just follow what you're doing and map it out. And so you've got an SOP document done in minutes. Like, how cool is that? It's a little plug for Scribe.
Yeah, and what I love is that if you haven't even yet made your first hire, you can start building the SOPs and the processes beforehand. to prepare for when that person comes. So like, it's like, okay, I need to get all my ducks in a row so that I'm ready to make sure I've got the best return on investment on by, bringing in a new team member. So yeah, that's some of the preparation that we can do to make sure we're ready for that to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when people are thinking about that hire, is there something that you would recommend that they do so that they bring on someone who is the type of person who wants to take ownership and wants to think for themselves? Because not everybody is like that. Like, I know I've had so many different people that I've managed over the years, and some people very quickly, they love it. They'll just take the bull by the horns. They're like, great, I've got this, I've got this project, and they really want to just go with it. And there are other people that, gosh, even you have to spend a lot of time sitting with them, and it takes a long time before they're even feeling half ready to step in and take that role on.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that experience with me, I kind of would be thinking, if I'm now hiring someone new for my team, that's the type of person I'm looking for. And it's interesting because I think a lot of the time, a lot of advice around when you're hiring people, they're like, get them to follow some instructions and do tasks. I'm like, but isn't that therefore hiring the person who might want the checklist? they want the task. And that means that you're going to be hiring the person and telling them what to do all the time.
Yeah. So it is still part of that like hiring process. I wouldn't do a checklist, but I would have like a set of tasks inside the instructions that are not necessarily a clear like tick, tick, tick. I would have like, one of the tricks I have is inside the job description in like the third or fourth paragraph, I would put something in there about in the subject line, include this particular word. And so that it's like, you have to be attention to detail, like you need to be observant enough to say, oh, that's part of the trick. So any applications you get that don't have that word in the subject line, they didn't read it through properly. But also, as one of the questions could be like, when you've finished a task and you're looking for the next task, what's your next process? And some of them might say, well, I like to be proactive and find out at the start of the week what my tasks are for the week. Or it could be someone saying, well, I would like to be in there in that brainstorming decision-making process to make sure that I'm part of that and I can see the bigger picture. So it is their answers that can be part of it. And I would also put as one of my questions is, what are your core values? Because one of mine is family, and that might be like, okay, that means family comes first, but that also means that family comes first for my team, which means, yes, if I need to step away because of my kids and my team is happy to step in for me, and while I go look after my kids, it has to happen the other way around too. Like, I should expect to be able to step in for my team when they need that. And so there's a balance that needs to happen both ways to make sure that we're all aligned with that same value. So I think part of that is also mission. Like, you might have a mission for your business as, we want to grow and be seen in the world. I don't know what your mission actually is. I should probably find out. But then your team members might have a personal mission to say, like, well, I want to make sure, women can find jobs in the marketplace. So can your missions align? And what can my business do to support your mission so that we're all working towards that same goal together? And if their mission is completely different, well, then that's obviously a misalignment, and I probably wouldn't consider hiring them because they have completely different goals in life than I do.
I love that actually, because I don't think I've ever asked what someone's mission is in a job interview, but I'm like, that makes so much sense, because you're going to have something that you're passionate about. Like, why are you even doing this? Why are you here? It doesn't matter that they're not the business owner, but they might have there's some bandwagons that you're going to get on and you're going to be supportive of. And, so for me, for example, when I started this business, I was really, the reason why I chose specifically to work with women was because I'm like, I want to see women really succeeding, having businesses where they're making more than what they would make in their corporate jobs. They're actually breaking through all the things that have held them back, because I've just seen it for so long, and it was so frustrating in that world where women were being paid less than men. They were getting put in boxes as soon as you had children, as soon as you want to work part-time. It was like, oh, you're not a
Yeah.
valuable employee anymore. And I found it to be the exact opposite. Like, my best employees were part-time working mums. And I was like,
Yeah.
they've just got it all wrong. Like, they should actually be, really wanting these people in their business, because they're so efficient. They're always
Yeah.
dedicated. And so for me, I was like, I want to change the status quo, and I want all these women who are starting their own business because they're kind of being pushed out for reasons that they're not even real. I actually want them to be even more successful on their own. So I kind of had that real driver of like,
Yeah.
that's what I want. That's why I'm in
Yes.
business. And I know that a lot of people who've worked with me and my team over the years have shared that. They're like, they really
Yeah.
share that vision and that passion. And, it doesn't matter that it's not their own business. They still felt very connected to it, like in terms of their purpose.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel good when that's what you're doing as well, right? When you've got the stories and the wins, and it's like,
Absolutely.
yes, we are succeeding one person at a time. We will we'll make the change.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
what a great.
Yeah. Very similar story. Yeah. For me, like I grew up poor, single mum, in government housing, and then when I was 13, my dad died. He lived in another state, so I didn't really know him, but I had some inheritance. And I remember like this feeling of relief come over me to say, I'm going to be okay in
Mm,
life because I've, had a little bit of a step up that nobody else usually has. So like, I'm going to be okay. I don't have to, be poor and living out of government houses
mm,
and live paycheck to paycheck. And so, and I was young then, but then what happens is I got into my teenage years, and the person who was looking after the trust of my money started using that money to like blackmail me and use me, and like it ended
oh,
up being an
no.
absolute disaster until I was old enough to have the money for myself. And so I think that taught me a lesson about financial freedom,
Mm,
but also like having independence as well. And that I think is what brought me back to what I do, how I do what I do, why I ended up in finance to start with, and then
mm.
why it's so important for me for that women to find financial freedom, anybody to find financial freedom, but women in particular, because it was used against me. And so like sometimes it's those core memories that happen from a young age. It's like, that's not fair. So that's what we're fighting the world, and that's what creates our mission in life.
Wow. Yeah, that just absolutely. And I think that's the thing, is there is something that everybody will have that you believe in, regardless of
Mm.
what your story is. I think it's, you only have to find what that thread is. Like, what is the reason why you're here, and why you're
Yeah,
doing it, and finding people who align with that in some version, some format. And, they may have different reasons for why they want it, but when you're all going in the same
yeah,
direction, it means that you're going to be, pulling the same way, and you've got that synergy, which is
exactly.
great.
Exactly.
Wow, this is such a great conversation, Laurie. Is there anything that you think we haven't touched on in terms of, building a business that runs without you? Any final, insight, little nugget of gold, lesson or learning that you've had over the years that you think we shouldn't leave unspoken today?
Yes, it is bottlenecks.
Okay.
So, like, if I was to ask, what's the biggest bottleneck in your business? Immediately going to go, it's me.
Hi.
I'm the problem. But, um, but when we're looking into the scheme of a business, it's actually got to do with your assets. And so the bottlenecks that are happening in our business, there's 5 particular bottlenecks
Mhm.
that can happen. First one is brand awareness. Brand awareness itself can be a
Mhm.
bottleneck. Generating leads and nurturing your audience, that can be another
Yeah.
bottleneck. Sales and conversion, that can be another bottleneck. The delivery and the capacity that you have in your business is a bottleneck, and also cash
Mhm.
flow can be a
Yeah.
bottleneck, especially if you've got the capacity and you're still having cash flow problems. Then that can be a bottleneck itself. So part of the process of working, how do we build our business and grow our business and essentially step out of it is creating assets for each step of that cycle that can happen in our business. So all of our customers go through that cycle of understanding that you even exist and that you have a problem, they have a problem that you can solve for them. So as your business grows, one of those areas is going to be your biggest bottleneck. And so if you can work on to opening up that bottleneck and loosening it, then your business levels up. But then you'll find the bottleneck is in a different place. So let's say your bottleneck is in sales. You're the only person who can do all the sales in your business, and you keep having one-to-ones with everyone. And so that's your biggest bottleneck. And then you open up that bottleneck, you start doing sales one-to-many, your website's converting. So then suddenly you have an influx of capacity. Oh, now I've got a capacity problem. So now we need to, open up that capacity and hire somebody or do a one-to-many course or however it is that you can open up that capacity. Then you'll find that a bottleneck goes somewhere else. Well, now that we've brought all those people in, now we need to have a leads bottleneck. And so creating assets for each of those and brainstorming with your team and working out all those processes, that is how we level up inside our business and keep growing that and expanding it beyond ourselves.
Yeah, love that. And you can just see the old bottleneck with the cash flow. Once you've got all those clients and you've got the team and the systems, the number of times that I've heard a story of a business that sort of on paper they're doing really well in terms of revenue, but they're just not profitable. It's like cash flow is a major bottleneck. They're spending, times it's like, well, you spent more than what you earned, but you're earning an amazing amount. And it almost is like, how can this even be when you've got all these people coming in and everything looks like it's working? That is, so important. I love that, and to see, you can just literally see that bottleneck process. It moves from area to area as you go. It's like new level, different
and
level.
It will, no matter what size. Exactly. But if it helps your audience, I do have a bottleneck quiz that I can give you the link
Amazing.
for. Yeah. Do people work out what is their current biggest bottleneck in their business?
Oh, great. That sounds amazing. Let's do that, because then you can stop ruminating over it overnight, go and do the quiz and find out what your bottleneck is. Well, we'll link that up in the show notes so you can find that there. Scroll down, click on the link and do the quiz. Thank you, Laurie. This has been such a great chat. I know that we could talk business a lot, obviously.
Yes.
Many things there. Love your story, and thank you so much for sharing with us so openly about, just your expertise and your own stories. Loved hearing how you got started and all of the things. It's just been a really pleasurable conversation. Thank you.
Loved it. Thank you very much, Jess.
We will talk again soon, no doubt. And guys, if you have loved hearing from Laurie, where can they find you? Where do you hang out on socials, or what's the best spot?
Yes, Instagram, laurie.stirling, or LinkedIn is also, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well. So both of those places, choose your pleasure, or my website, lauriestirling.com.
Great. All right. Well, we will make sure we've got those linked up in the show notes. If you are on Instagram and you've been listening to this episode, take a screenshot of it, post it in your stories and tag us, because we love to hear from our listeners. And I'd love to hear what, maybe a takeaway thought that you have or something that you've learnt from today. Please share that with us, and we'll definitely respond to you. I know that I check all my own social media. I'm sure Laurie does as well. So do that, and we'll both be very grateful to hear from you.
Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Bye.